I met a 90-year-old Japanese carpenter who had spent 70 years building temples. 70 years. Same craft, same purpose. Thousands of temples across Japan bearing his mark. When I visited him in his final days, I asked the question I thought mattered most. Which temple are you most proud of? He smiled, and that smile held something I didn't expect. Sadness, maybe, or wisdom. He said, none of them. I was confused. 70 years of masterwork and none of them? Then what? He looked at me with eyes that had seen decades I couldn't imagine, and he said, the temples will fall. Wood rots. Earthquakes come. Fire takes what man builds. But the young people I taught? They're still building. That's what remains. Not the wood I shaped, the hands I shaped. Today, I'm sharing the final lesson this master carpenter taught me about legacy. And I promise you, it's not what you think matters. It's not what any of us think matters until we're 90 years old and looking back. You're building something right now. A career, a business, a reputation, a body of work. And you probably measure your progress by what you can see. The achievements, the accomplishments, the tangible proof that you're making progress, that your life means something, that you're leaving a mark. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. We all need to see evidence that our work matters. But here's what haunts a lot of us, especially in quiet moments. The question we don't always say out loud. Does any of this actually matter? Not does it make money, not does it impress people, not does it look good on paper, but does it matter in the way you want your life to matter? And here's the deeper fear underneath that question. What if you spend your whole life building the wrong things? What if you get to 90 years old and you look back and realize that the impressive things you built didn't actually matter, and the things that mattered you completely overlooked because they didn't seem impressive enough at the time? Western culture has taught us that legacy is about what you build. Your career achievements, your accumulated wealth, your visible accomplishments, the buildings with your name on them, the projects you completed, the company you grew, the tangible proof that you were here and you did something that lasted. We measure legacy in monuments, in things that can be seen, counted, photographed, celebrated. And there's a certain logic to that. Those things are real, they're measurable. You can point to them and say, I did that. But a Japanese master carpenter who spent 70 years building some of the most beautiful temples in Japan learned something different, something that took him most of his life to understand. He learned that legacy isn't about what you build, it's about who you build. Not the structures you create, but the people you shape. Not the visible work, but the invisible influence. Not the achievements with your name on them, but the lives you touched that carry forward what you taught them. And this isn't just philosophical poetry, it's devastatingly practical. Because the carpenter's temples will decay, wood rots, earthquakes destroy, fire consumes. In 100 years, maybe 200, most of what he built will be gone. But the apprentices he trained, they're still building, teaching others, passing forward what he passed to them. And those people are teaching others, and that chain never breaks. That's real legacy.
Let me tell you his story, because it's not just his story, it's a mirror for all of us who are trying to build lives that matter. His name was Takumi, and when I met him, he was sitting in his workshop surrounded by tools he could no longer hold. Chisels worn smooth from 70 years of use, saws that had cut thousands of pieces of wood, planes that had shaped timber into temples. The workshop smelled like cedar and thyme. Everything in that space had been touched by decades of skilled hands, but those hands were still now, too weak, too old. The work was finished. Takumi had started his apprenticeship at age 13. This was in 1940s in rural Japan. His father was a carpenter, his grandfather was a carpenter. This was the family trade, passed down through generations. He learned the way apprentices have learned for centuries, by watching, by trying, by failing, by being corrected, by trying again. His master was harsh in the way old craftsmen could be harsh. Perfection wasn't the goal, because perfection was impossible, but excellence was expected. Every cut, every joint, every surface. If it wasn't excellent, you did it again. Takumi told me about his first year, how his hands bled from gripping tools he didn't yet know how to hold properly, how his back ached from bending over workbenches for 12 hours a day, how he would cry at night from the frustration of failing again and again at tasks that looked simple when his master did them, but were impossibly difficult when he tried. His master would say the same thing every time Takumi wanted to give up. The wood is teaching you. Listen to it. The wood knows what it wants to become. Your job is to help it get there. Stop fighting it. Work with it. It took Takumi 3 years to understand what that meant. 3 years of cutting wood wrong, of forcing joints that didn't want to fit, of trying to impose his will on the material instead of listening to what the material was telling him. And then one day, something shifted. He was working on a simple joint, something he'd done hundreds of times and failed at hundreds of times, and suddenly he felt it. The wood telling him where to cut, how much pressure, what angle. It wasn't mystical. It was just finally paying attention instead of forcing. And the joint fit perfectly, like it had wanted to fit that way all along and was just waiting for him to stop fighting it. His master saw it happen, walked over, examined the joint without saying anything, then looked at Takumi and nodded once. That single nod meant more than any praise ever could. It meant, now you're a carpenter. Not because you made one good joint, but because you finally learned to listen. Takumi spent the next 67 years building temples. Small ones in mountain villages where 3 families would worship, large ones in cities where hundreds would gather. Each one took years. You don't build a temple quickly. You select the wood carefully. You let it season. You cut each piece by hand. You fit joints without nails or screws, just wood meeting wood so precisely that it holds for centuries. You carve details that most people will never notice, but that matter because they're part of the whole. You sand surfaces until they're smooth as water. Every step is slow, deliberate, intentional. And Takumi became a master. He was known across Japan for his work. Other carpenters would come to study his techniques. Monks would request him specifically for their temple projects. He had apprentices of his own, young people who wanted to learn from someone who understood the craft at the deepest level. His reputation grew. His work was celebrated. He built a legacy that anyone would be proud of. But here's what changed everything for him. And he told me this story with such clarity that I knew he'd been thinking about it for years, maybe decades, turning it over in his mind, understanding it more deeply each time. It was 40 years ago. Takumi was 50 years old at the time, at the peak of his skill and his career. He had an apprentice named Kenji. Kenji was 17, and he was troubled. That's the word Takumi used, troubled. His family had sent him to learn carpentry because they didn't know what else to do with him. He was angry, unfocused. He would start tasks and abandon them. He had no patience, no discipline, no apparent interest in the craft. He was just there because he had to be somewhere. Takumi's other apprentices thought Kenji would quit within a month. Most difficult apprentices quit quickly. The work is too hard, the standards too high, the progress too slow. They give up and find something easier. But Kenji didn't quit. He showed up every day. He just didn't really try. He would go through the motions, but without any care or attention. His work was sloppy, careless, the kind of work that a master craftsman has to redo because it's unusable. For 6 months, Takumi watched this, corrected him, showed him again how to do things properly, but nothing changed, and Takumi was getting frustrated. He had built temples that would stand for centuries. He had trained dozens of excellent craftsmen. He didn't have time to waste on someone who clearly didn't want to learn. He decided he was going to dismiss Kenji, send him home, tell his family that carpentry wasn't for him. But then something happened. It was an autumn afternoon. The light was golden coming through the workshop windows. Takumi was working on a particularly difficult joint for a temple project. Kenji was supposed to be practicing basic cuts on scrap wood, but as usual, he was just standing there, looking at the wood without really seeing it. Takumi glanced over at him, ready to deliver yet another correction. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the light. Maybe it was intuition. But instead of correcting Kenji, he asked him a question he'd never asked before. He said, "Kenji, why are you here? Not here in the workshop, but here, in your life. Why do you wake up every day? What are you hoping to find?" Kenji looked startled. No one had asked him that before. And for a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he said something that broke Takumi's heart. He said, "I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Everyone expects something from me, and I don't know what it is or how to do it. So I just go through the motions and wait for someone to tell me I failed so I can stop pretending." Takumi put down his tools. He walked over to where Kenji was standing, and he did something he'd never done with an apprentice before. He told Kenji the truth about his own life. He said, "When I was your age, I hated this work. I was forced into it. It was family tradition. I had no choice. And for the first 3 years, every single day I wanted to quit. I thought I was terrible at it. I thought I would never understand it. I was just going through the motions, waiting to fail. And then one day, the wood spoke to me. That sounds mystical, but it's not. It just means I finally stopped trying to force it and started listening to it. And everything changed. Not because I suddenly became talented, but because I finally paid attention." He picked up a piece of wood and handed it to Kenji. He said, "Feel this. Not just touch it, feel it. What is this wood telling you? Where does it want to be cut? What does it want to become?" Kenji looked at him like he was crazy, but Takumi was serious. So Kenji actually looked at the wood, felt it, studied the grain, and slowly, hesitantly, he said, "Here. It wants to be cut here, following this line in the grain."
Takumi smiled. He said, "So cut it there. And this time, don't think about whether you're doing it right or wrong. Don't worry about failing. Just listen to the wood and help it become what it wants to be. That's all carpentry is. That's all any craft is. Listening, then helping." Kenji made the cut, and it wasn't perfect. It wasn't even particularly good, but it was different from every other cut he'd made in 6 months, because this time he was paying attention. This time he cared, not about impressing anyone, not about meeting a standard, but about the wood itself, about helping it become what it wanted to be. And Takumi saw something in that moment that changed his entire understanding of his work. He saw Kenji's hands stop shaking, saw his posture change, saw focus enter his eyes for the first time. And he realized, this is the work, not building temples. This, helping a young person discover that they can create something, that they can pay attention, that they can transform raw material into something beautiful. The temples are just the excuse for this moment to happen. Kenji didn't become a master craftsman overnight. It still took years. He still made mistakes. He still got frustrated. But that day, something fundamental shifted. He stopped going through the motions. He started actually learning. And over the years, he became an excellent carpenter. He went on to train his own apprentices, to build his own temples, to pass forward what Takumi had passed to him. And 40 years later, when I asked Takumi which temple he was most proud of, he thought about that moment. That single afternoon with a troubled 17-year-old boy whose hands finally stopped shaking. And he realized that moment mattered more than all the temples. Because the temples will fall. They're already falling. Some have burned, some have been damaged in earthquakes, some are being torn down to make room for modern buildings. In 100 years, most of what he built with his hands will be gone. But Kenji is still building, and Kenji's apprentices are still building, and their apprentices are still building, and every single one of them carries forward something that Takumi taught. Not just carpentry techniques, but a way of seeing, a way of paying attention, a way of listening to the material, to the work,
to the people around them. That doesn't decay. That doesn't burn. That doesn't fall in earthquakes. That lives in people. And people teach people. And that chain never breaks. Takumi told me, I spent 70 years thinking I was building temples. But I wasn't. I was building people. The temples were just the excuse, the training ground, the place where young people could learn to pay attention, to care about their work, to transform raw material into something beautiful. And some of them became carpenters, but most of them didn't. They became teachers, business owners, parents, artists, monks. They went into completely different fields, but they all carried forward what they learned in that workshop. How to listen, how to see potential in raw material, how to be patient with the process, how to care about quality even when no one else will notice, how to help things become what they want to be instead of forcing them to be what you think they should be. That's legacy, not the buildings I made, the people I shaped. And the beautiful thing about that kind of legacy is that it compounds. Every person I taught went on to teach others, and those people taught others, and my influence multiplies across generations in ways my temples never could. The temples are addition, one more building in the world, but people are multiplication. One person shapes 10 people who each shape 10 more. That's exponential. That's how legacy actually works. He paused, and I sat with what he just said. And then he told me the 3 questions he wishes someone had asked him when he was young, instead of having to figure it out when he was 90.
The first question is, who are you building? Not what projects are you working on, not what you're achieving, but who are you investing in? Who are you teaching, mentoring, encouraging, shaping? Your children, obviously, but not just your children. The junior colleague who's struggling, the nephew who looks up to you, the friend going through a crisis, the stranger who needs guidance. Who are you building? Because that's your real work. Everything else is just the excuse for that work to happen. The second question is, what are you passing forward? Not what are you accumulating, not what are you keeping, but what are you giving away? What wisdom have you learned that you're teaching others? What skills have you developed that you're sharing? What character have you built that you're modeling? Legacy isn't what you keep, it's what you give away. It's what you pass forward to the next generation. And if you're not passing anything forward, then you're not building legacy, you're just building a pile. The third question is, will it compound? Not will it last physically, but will it multiply? Will the person you shape go on to shape others? Will what you teach them be taught to the next generation and the generation after that? That's compound legacy. Not monuments that decay, but influence that multiplies. And the only way to build that kind of legacy is to focus on people, not things. Because things don't teach, people do. Takumi looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much, and he said, I'm 90 years old. I've built hundreds of temples. I've won awards. I've been celebrated. People know my name. But none of that matters now. What matters is that somewhere in Japan, right now, there's a carpenter teaching an apprentice. And that carpenter learned from someone who learned from someone who learned from me. And the chain continues. That apprentice will teach someone someday, and they'll teach someone, and my influence will be in that chain forever, even though no one will remember my name. That's legacy. Not the name on the building, the influence in the chain. He died 2 weeks after that conversation, and I attended his funeral. It was small, quiet, a handful of family members, a few old friends, but there was something else there that made me understand his lesson even more deeply. There were dozens of people I'd never seen before, men and women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and when I asked who they were, someone told me those are his apprentices, and their apprentices, and their apprentices. People who never met him, but whose teachers were taught by him. They came to pay respects to a man they'd never met, but whose influence shaped their entire approach to their craft and their lives. That's when I fully understood what he'd been trying to tell me. Legacy isn't about the people who know your name. It's about the people who carry your influence, even if they've never heard of you. It's about the chain, the unbroken chain of people teaching people teaching people. And if you want to build that kind of legacy, you have to stop focusing on building impressive things and start focusing on shaping impressive people. So, let me bring this back to you, because this isn't just a story about an old carpenter. This is about your life, right now, today. What are you building? And more importantly, who are you building? You probably have projects, work, goals, things you're trying to achieve, and that's good, that's necessary. But here's what I want you to consider. All of those projects are just wood, raw material. The question isn't what you're building with that wood. The question is who you're teaching while you build it. Because the building won't last, but the people will. And if you're so focused on the building that you're not paying attention to the people, then you're building a legacy that will decay just like Takumi's temples are decaying. Who in your life right now is like Kenji was? Troubled, unfocused, going through the motions. Maybe it's your kid. Maybe it's a junior colleague. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's someone you barely know but keeps showing up in your periphery. That person is your real work, not the project on your desk. That person. And the question is, are you paying attention to them? Are you investing in them? Are you asking them the questions that need to be asked? Are you showing them how to listen to the wood, metaphorically speaking, how to pay attention, how to care, how to see what's possible? Because here's what Takumi learned. That single afternoon with Kenji mattered more than 70 years of building temples. One conversation, one moment of actually seeing someone, one question that opened a door. That moment compounded across 40 years into Kenji teaching others, teaching others, teaching others. That's legacy. Not the temples, the moment.
So here's the practice. 3 simple things you can do starting this week. First, identify one person you're going to invest in. Not 5 people, not everyone. One person. Someone in your life right now who needs what you have to offer. Not money, not connections, but attention, wisdom, guidance, encouragement. Someone who, if you invested in them the way Takumi invested in Kenji, their life would change. Pick one person. Write their name down. That's your real work for the next month. Not your projects, that person. Second, ask yourself every week, what am I passing forward? Not what am I accumulating? What am I giving away? What wisdom did I learn this week that I taught someone? What skill did I develop that I shared? What character did I model? Keep a simple journal, just one line per week. This week, I passed forward blank. Fill in the blank. Because if you're not passing anything forward, you're not building legacy. You're just collecting stuff that will be thrown away when you're gone. Third, at the end of every month, ask yourself, will this compound? Not, did I build something impressive, but did I influence someone in a way that they'll pass forward to others? Did I teach someone something they'll teach others? Did I model something they'll model for others? Because that's the only measure of legacy that actually matters. Not what you built, what you started that will continue without you. Takumi spent 70 years building before he understood this. You don't have to. You can understand it now, today. And you can start building the kind of legacy that doesn't decay, the kind that compounds, the kind that lives in people instead of buildings, the kind that multiplies across generations, the kind that matters. So, let's come back to the beginning. I asked Takumi which temple he was most proud of, expecting him to tell me about his greatest architectural achievement, and he said none of them. Because he understood what most of us spend our whole lives not understanding. That impressive things we build aren't what matter. What matters are the unimpressive moments when we shape people, when we see someone, when we invest in them, when we pass forward what we've learned. Those moments don't look impressive at the time. They don't win awards, they don't get celebrated. They just happen quietly in workshops, in offices, in living rooms, in coffee shops. But those are the moments that compound. Those are the moments that multiply. Those are the moments that create legacy that lasts not just years, but generations. Because people teach people who teach people who teach people who teach people. And if you're in that chain, if your influence is being passed forward in ways you'll never see, and by people who will never know your name, then you've built something that actually matters. You've built legacy. Takumi's temples are falling. Wood rots. Earthquakes destroy. Fire consumes. But somewhere in Japan right now, there's a carpenter teaching an apprentice to listen to the wood. And that carpenter learned from someone who learned from someone who learned from Takumi. And that chain will never break. That's legacy. Not the buildings, the chain.
So here's what I want you to remember, not just today, but for the rest of your life. You're not building a career. You're not building wealth. You're not building achievements. You're building people. Everything else is just the excuse for that work to happen. And if you can shift your focus from the impressive work to the invisible work, from the buildings to the people, from the monuments to the moments, then you'll build a legacy that actually matters. A legacy that compounds. A legacy that never decays. If this story changed how you see your life's work, if you're ready to stop building things and start building people, hit that like button. It tells me these ancient lessons still speak to our modern lives. And if you want more of this, more stories that cut through the noise and get to what actually matters, more wisdom that honors both achievement and meaning, more teachings that say your real work is invisible but eternal, subscribe to Wisdom Forgotten. We're building a community here of people who understand that legacy isn't about monuments, it's about moments. Leave a comment. Tell me, who is your Kenji? Who's the one person you're going to invest in starting this week? I read every comment. Your commitment inspires others to do the same invisible work that changes everything. And if someone you love is so focused on achievement that they're missing the people, so busy building things that they're not building anyone, share this story with them. Not as criticism, but as an invitation. An invitation to shift focus, to build legacy that compounds, to understand that the wood you shape matters less than the hands you shape. Takumi spent 70 years learning this lesson. He wishes he'd learned it sooner. You can learn it today. You can start building the kind of legacy that doesn't fall, the kind that lives in people, the kind that multiplies across generations you'll never see, the kind that matters. The temples are falling, but the people are still building. That's legacy. That's what remains. That's what actually matters when you're 90 years old and looking back. So, go build people. Everything else is just wood. I'll see you in the next video.